At the beginning of the movie, we see our protagonist, a radio DJ named Sam Handers, on her way to work. She is in a good mood and greets everyone she comes across before arriving at her station. After playing one song, she briefly mentions an obscure instrument. All of a sudden, her boss, Greta, comes along and asks her to talk in private. Sam's boss scolds her, telling her to stop talking about obscure instruments and dull music facts on air, because listeners find that boring. Sam retorts by bragging about her extensive music knowledge, but her boss says it's not enough to make a good podcast. Suddenly, the conversation turns personal. For some reason, Greta points out it's been 3 years since Sam opened her heart to anyone romantically. Perhaps her boss thinks that Sam's love life, or lack thereof, will have an impact on the podcast. Greta reveals that the higher-ups are thinking of canceling the podcast. The news awakens something in Sam. Not wanting the show canceled, she promises her boss that she'll create a playlist that will take listeners back in time, like a time machine. This is exactly the mood that Greta wants to see Sam in, so she cheers her on as Sam leaves to get back to work. In the next scene, we see a mechanic named Jake helping a woman out with her car trouble. After helping her out, he notices that she is listening to a song that he likes. Sensing that they might have something in common, he shoots his shot and asks her out. Jake finds out her name is Becky, and she gives him her number. When Becky leaves, though, Jake's phone suddenly slips from his hands, and it gets run over by a passing car. Some time later, we see Jake filming a tutorial video with his brother, Alex. His brother stops him for a second, because he sounds boring and too technical. Suddenly, Jake starts talking about the girl he met the other day. He is still hung up on her, thinking she's the one, because he felt a spark. Alex points out that he isn't in a movie, and then changes the topic. They briefly talk about business, and how they can expand it. Meanwhile, Jake can't stop bringing up Becky, and how he can't get the number out of his phone. Alex then suggests putting out a personal ad as a joke, but Jake takes this idea seriously. In the next scene, we see Sam talking and making plans with her podcast co-host, Adam. Suddenly, her boss arrives and drags her out of the booth. She tells Sam that there's another radio show called Love Beats that needs her, and she'll be the impromptu host. Sam is feeling hesitant and nervous because she's never hosted on that particular show. However, Greta tells her to do what she usually does, and not worry about it. Since Sam doesn't know what to say, one of the show's producers, Kathy, is there to guide her. The producer acts out what Sam has to say, while Sam fumbles and figures it out. Suffice it to say, there is a lot of stuttering and guesswork, but Sam eventually finds her groove. During the show, Sam receives a call from Jake. He tells her about the woman he met, and how he wants to see her again, but can't. Jake wants help from the show so they can be reunited. Instead of being helpful, Sam questions the validity of his request. She thinks that since Jake only met Becky for a short while, his request doesn't count. Jake insists that he has a connection with her, and that there are signs that Becky might be the one. Sam, on the other hand, continues arguing with him, and tells him to give up and move on. After a few back and forths, Sam complies with the request, but she plays a different song than what Jake requested. The producers are left speechless. Hours later, Kathy drags Sam to her office and shows her that interest in the show has significantly increased after the last airing. Sam is shocked by this, since she butchered her hosting performance. Kathy points out that it was Jake and his hunger for finding love that the listeners loved. The two proceed to talk about love, and this is when we find out that Sam once believed in true love. However, after getting hurt, she became more cynical and skeptical. At one point in the conversation, Sam suddenly thinks of a great segment for Love Beats. Sam and Kathy talk to Greta, and they show her the increase in viewership and downloads of Love Beats. Sam proposes that they get Jake on the show and make him a temporary member, until he finds the person he is looking for. Greta is hesitant at first, because she doesn't want Sam to host it again, but Kathy eventually convinces her to say yes. Kathy outlines a plan for how the show will go, in a way that the listeners will love. Sam is on board with the plan, except for one part, which is playing the song Starlight Dreams, which she despises. In the next scene, we see Sam and Adam talking at a bar. He thinks they have had a great date so far. However, Sam clarifies that it's not considered a date, since she wants to take things slow. Adam seems confused, so he changes the topic, and they talk about Sam hosting Love Beats. She reassures him that it won't affect their own podcast. During the conversation, we also find out that Sam had been writing letters to a rock icon named Mercy Lewis, hoping to interview her. So far, she's been doing this for 3 years without success. Adam is confident that one day, the interview will happen. The next day, Kathy and Sam talk about the song they are going to play on the show. While talking about love songs, Kathy gets excited, which causes her to initiate a slow dance with Sam. This is when Jake arrives and startles the ladies. After getting acquainted, Jake and Sam prepare to go on air. While doing so, they start arguing about Sam's way of appreciating songs. He thinks she's too rigid, so he suggests letting loose sometimes when listening to music. Sam defends her preferences, but tells him his advice is appreciated, just so the conversation moves on. During the show, a caller asks Jake to describe what Becky was wearing when they met. He proceeds to talk about the woman's sparkly shoes, and points out that she had a trumpet hanging by her windshield. Moments later, it's time for Jake to play a song from his playlist. However, when he tries to talk about the song, Sam notices that he is referring to Starlight Dreams, so she plays another song at the last minute. Jake and Kathy have no idea why she is acting this way. Later that day, Sam meets up with Adam to hand him some important files. He is going to take over her show, Music Thread, while she's on the road working on Love Beats. He scans the files and notices a few things related to Mercy Lewis and Sam's fascination with the singer. It's been her dream to meet her since she was a kid. The next day, Sam's boss gives her some instructions on what to do on the Love Beats roadshow. At one point, Greta mentions that if Jake doesn't find Becky, it wouldn't be so bad for Sam. She is implying that Sam and Jake might develop a romance while on the show. Sam dismisses this absurd statement by mentioning that his favorite song is the song she hates. Once again, it's baffling how Greta insists on having a conversation about her employees' love life in an office setting. Later, before Sam, Jake, and Kathy hit the road, Adam gives a personalized CD mix to Sam. The sweet gesture does not go unnoticed. While on the road, Jake pries into Sam's private life by asking her about Adam. She clarifies that she is not dating him, and this starts another back and forth between the two of them. Meanwhile, Kathy is listening to their banter and is enjoying the moment. When they finally stop bantering, Sam and Jake begin the radio show. Later, the trio arrive at Jake's auto repair shop to meet and interview his brother. Alex talks about Jake and how romantic he can be. He also finds a way to insert their business into the interview, mentioning that they plan to expand. Moments later, Sam finds Jake alone in a room, looking at a photo of his dad. This is when we find out that his dad passed away 5 years ago. Jake shares some of the fun activities that he used to do with his dad, back in the day. If it was up to Jake alone, he would want to preserve the shop just the way it is. Jake briefly looks at his broken phone, and Sam finds a chance to crack a joke about turning it off and on again. This is the first time we see both of them laugh together. Outside, Sam asks Jake if there is any bumper sticker on Becky's car that he can remember. After racking his brain for a while, Jake remembers that there was a sticker saying, "I rock." Everyone tries to figure out what it's referencing, but Alex is the one who figures out that it might be related to rock climbing. He points out that there are a lot of rock climbers in an area not too far from there, and that they could go there next to search for Becky. The next day, the group arrives at their next destination with flyers in hand, ready to ask around. Sam is worried that going on a hike might leave her exhausted, but Jake reassures her that it will be a fun experience. A random stranger weirdly interrupts the conversation to tell them about Jagged Rock, and how climbing it will give them a rush. Sam hands a flyer to the stranger, and he once again tells them that any serious climber will be up there at Jagged Rock. Kathy decides to head to their Airbnb, while Sam and Jake stick the flyers on different locations. Jake doubts if the person they are looking for even resides in that area. Sam reassures him that they'll go from one town to the next, if that is the case. She also makes a funny impression to lighten the mood. Looks like these two are starting to get along. The trio continue the show at their rented place. Before they go on air, Sam receives a text from Adam, asking her for updates. He wants her to come back so they can work on their original podcast again. During the show, Sam reads some encouraging messages from their listeners. The third message she reads is from a person who thinks that they spotted the person they're looking for. It turns out that they came to the right place. After reading the messages, Sam plays music from Jake's playlist, something that she refused to do before. The next day, we see Sam and Jake on the road to continue their search. Jake asks to play a song, but Sam is hesitant to let him pick, since he likes a song that she dislikes. However, she is pleasantly surprised when he picks a song by Mercy Lewis. Their taste in music is not so different after all. During the drive, Jake asks if Sam has ever done anything that is not planned. Sam admits that sometimes while cooking, she uses different ingredients that are not in a recipe. Jake laughs and clarifies that he means not having a plan. He then proceeds to yank out her phone and mess with the GPS application, like a normal person. Unsurprisingly, just like most romantic movie protagonists, Jake suggests ditching their plan and going on a different journey by trusting their gut. Sam knows that getting lost in the middle of nowhere will prolong the time before she can get back to her main podcast. However, since Jake says it will be fun, she agrees. Jake and Sam go on a hike in some random location. When they stop to rest, Jake shares a story about how his father would take him on random hikes, and the lessons he learned from doing that. Seconds later, they proceed to waste more time by looking at rock formations, and thinking about what each rock looks like. After an unproductive day, Sam and Jake reach the end of their hike. They briefly talk about Sam's music philosophy, which somehow is also connected to her views on finding love. This is when Jake realizes that despite her rigged approach to dating, Sam still believes in the power of a magic moment when it comes to romance. When Jake leaves for a few minutes to get their car, Sam sees a familiar vehicle nearby. She sees a bumper sticker that says, "I rock." Since Jake is not there with her, Sam decides to memorize the plate number, instead of calling the attention of Becky, who is right there in front of her. When Jake comes back, she doesn't tell him about what she saw. That night, Sam looks up the plate number online, which somehow allows her to pinpoint Becky's exact location the next day. In the next scene, Sam enters a shop owned by Becky. She slowly walks in and stares at the woman, instead of getting straight to the point. When Becky asks her if she needs anything, Sam responds in the weirdest way possible. Instead of introducing herself first and stating her purpose, Sam informs Becky that she knows her, the car she drives, and that someone is in love with her. Naturally, Becky thinks she is talking to a stalker and threatens to activate her security system. This is when Sam finally explains further context regarding the situation. When Becky asks why Jake hasn't contacted her, Sam explains the incident with Jake's phone and how he called the radio show for help. Unfortunately, even after hearing the explanation, Becky hesitates to meet up with Jake. She tells Sam to tell Jake that he should just move on. In an attempt to convince Becky to change her mind, Sam lists all of Jake's good qualities, making it sound like she is in love with him. Despite Sam's efforts, Becky's mind is made up. Sam leaves the store feeling defeated. In the next scene, Sam is packing her bags, preparing to call it quits so she can return to the office and work on her podcast. Kathy tries to convince her to continue the search, stating that they still believe that they can find Becky. Sam doesn't tell Kathy about the earlier encounter, but she suggests that perhaps Becky doesn't want to be found. Surprisingly, Jake joins in on the conversation and agrees with Sam. He tells the ladies that he's considering continuing the search more quietly. Sam suggests that they should have one final episode, similar to a send-off. That way, fans of the show will feel a sense of closure. Later that night, Jake and Sam go out to play pool at a local pub. After Sam wins the game, they take some pictures together for fun. They even put one picture of them together on the wall. They both laugh and smile the entire time they are there. After having a fun time at the pub, Sam and Jake go back to their rental place to have a more serene conversation. This is when Sam opens up about being engaged 3 years ago. She describes being in love with a guy named Philip, who she met in France. It was the most romantic week of her life, which led to an engagement. However, she found out that aside from their shared interest in music, they had nothing else in common. Sam talks about her past view of romance and how it was similar to the movie It Happened One Night. Coincidentally, Jake reveals that his dad also loved that movie. Unfortunately, Sam says that her current view on romance has changed significantly, and that the events in that movie can't happen in real life. Jake, on the other hand, believes that if a person can fall in love in one night, they can fall in love in 15 minutes. Sam thinks it's nice that he still believes that. Sam and Jake stare at each other warmly, as if they are about to kiss. Then suddenly, Kathy arrives to ruin the moment. She reminds them of how excited she is for tomorrow's show, and thanks Jake for being a part of it. The next day, Sam and Jake finally do their send-off show, informing the listeners of Jake's plans. Meanwhile, we see Becky at her store. She sees people outside, wearing t-shirts and holding placards relating to Jake's search for her. Apparently, seeing how popular the situation has become is enough for Becky to change her mind and call the radio show. During the call, she introduces herself as the person that Jake is looking for, and tells them she has already forwarded her contact info. Sam and Jake are ecstatic, and at a loss for words. Although it is painfully obvious that despite Sam's outward happiness, deep inside, she wishes that Becky didn't call. The next day, Sam, Kathy, and Jake arrive at the location where they are supposed to meet Becky. Jake admits to Sam that he's getting cold feet, and even entertaining the idea of calling the whole thing off. Sam reassures him that it's a perfectly reasonable reaction, despite all the effort they've already put into the search. Once again, proving that Sam secretly doesn't want the meeting to happen. Still, she encourages Jake to see it through. Moments later, we see Sam sitting with Becky. Sam asks her why she changed her mind. Becky reveals that she was intimidated at first, but changed her mind because it might lead to true love. She then starts asking where the cameras are, as if she is expecting more press coverage. This implies that Becky might have ulterior motives. Later, Jake and Becky finally reunite, giving each other a warm hug. Meanwhile, Sam is trying to be professional and hide her jealousy, but her facial expression tells a different story. After recording the show, Jake and the others go to Becky's place to have dinner. Jake takes the time to talk to Sam, and thanks her for convincing him to see things through. Becky interrupts the conversation and calls Jake to help her prepare the meal, like he's an employee. Of course, Mr. Romantic doesn't mind being ordered around by the love of his life. Not wanting to feel more jealous, Sam makes an excuse to leave. Kathy reads the situation correctly, so she also excuses herself, stating that it's better if Jake and Becky spend the night alone together. Jake tries to stop them, but Becky thinks it's a great opportunity for them to get to know each other better. Once again, Jake concedes. The next day, Sam and Jake meet up for a short while. He gives her a gift before heading out to meet the love of his life. When Jake meets Becky, she spends most of their date scrolling through her phone and showing him her Instagram page. He cracks a joke, and Becky pretends to laugh at it. At one point, she points out that her follower count is not as many as it once was. The whole situation is super awkward, and their relationship is not off to a great start. Later that day, Sam hears screaming outside of her room. When she goes outside, she finds out that Becky and Jake are engaged. They will get married in 3 days. Just like anyone watching this movie, Sam is at a loss for words. She ends up promising to attend the wedding. Later that night, we see Sam trying out various dresses at Becky's store. Jake arrives and finds himself gawking at how gorgeous Sam looks in a pink dress. Meanwhile, his fiancée is busy talking about her social media views and how business is booming. Days later, Greta talks to Sam, informing her that Jake's wedding will be the biggest podcast episode they will cover. Suddenly, Sam starts talking about ethics and how the show seems to be intruding too much on Jake's private life. Greta sees through Sam. She figures out that Sam has fallen for Jake. Once again, Greta never fails to turn a work-related topic into a personal one. One night, Sam receives a video call from Adam. He informs her that Mercy Lewis agreed to do an interview. After finding out that Sam's show has been gaining popularity, Sam immediately agrees to go back to the office on Sunday. After all, it is an interview she has been waiting all her life for. In the next scene, we see a wedding rehearsal dinner that Kathy has put together. Sam arrives late, but just in time for her to hear Jake and Alex talk about moving the wedding venue to their property. Since the place is 2 hours away, they plan to prepare the venue on Saturday and move the wedding ceremony to a Sunday. Sam tells him that the Mercy Lewis interview is on Sunday, and she's not going to miss it to cover anything else. Becky insists that they should postpone the wedding if Sam is not going to be there. She wouldn't have met Jake if not for Sam. Becky reveals that Sam talked to her before she called the show. This is news to Jake, since Sam never told him about it. Livid, Jake asks to talk to Sam outside. Meanwhile, Becky is unfazed and asks the waiter to take a photo of her so she can post it on her blog. Outside, Sam and Jake get into an argument. Sam doesn't understand why Jake is making a fuss, even when he already got what he wanted. Jake explains that he takes issue with the fact that Sam intervened so she could push out a story that didn't matter to her. The argument gets messier as the two exchange scalding statements. However, when Sam brings up that Becky might have an ulterior motive, something clicks in Jake's mind. He figures out that Sam is jealous. As the argument comes to an end, Jake insists that Sam doesn't want to believe in the magic that is his love story. This is when Sam delivers the sickest burn, stating that she never saw any trace of magic in his relationship with Becky in the first place. She walks away, leaving Jake speechless. Moments later, we see Sam packing her things and leaving. Kathy tries to stop her with a sentimental speech, but Sam is too hurt to care. Sam ends up crying on the whole trip back. At the auto repair shop, Jake disagrees with his brother about a business idea. This is when Alex gives Jake a piece of his mind, while sounding like he's delivering spoken poetry. Alex points out that Jake's mindset is too stuck in the past, and that he should try moving with the times and being more open-minded. Before leaving, Alex tells his brother he's too in love with an idea. Moments before the wedding ceremony, Jake tells Becky a romantic line from his favorite movie. However, she doesn't get the reference and starts talking about energy signatures instead, which Jake can't relate to. Their differences become more apparent when Jake suggests a hiking-themed wedding. Becky doesn't like the idea, and the atmosphere turns awkward. After a long awkward pause, Jake and Becky finally acknowledge that they aren't compatible. Becky admits that she thought that she would fall in love with him, because a lot of people like him. She apologizes for hurting him. Jake admits that he is also to blame for building her up. They eventually agree to stop what they are doing with no hard feelings. In the next scene, Sam finally conducts the long-awaited interview with Mercy Lewis. However, as soon as the interview begins, she finds the rock icon unpleasant to talk to. Mercy responds to Sam's questions with sarcasm and sass. Meanwhile, Mercy responds more favorably to Adam. At one point, Sam realizes that her idol isn't the person she thought she would be, so she leaves the booth. Later, Greta sits down beside Sam in the waiting room and tells her the music thread is getting cancelled. Sam can't help but feel devastated by the loss of a show she has worked on for most of her life. The disastrous interview with Mercy Lewis was the last nail in the coffin. Back at the wedding, Jake announces that he's calling the event off. Instead, he takes his time to give a speech apologizing to his brother and promising to grow their business. Surprisingly, nobody in the crowd bats an eye and just goes along with it. In the next scene, Sam dials Kathy and asks her to connect the call to the wedding venue's sound system. She then delivers a speech about finding someone special and not realizing how dear to her that person is until it is too late. She never mentions Jake specifically, but everyone knows who she's talking about. After delivering the heartfelt speech, she finally plays the song Starlight Dreams, and everyone dances to it. The next day, Sam continues hosting Love Beats. She reads a few messages from some listeners, praising her for being authentic with her views on love. Moments later, Sam accepts a call, and it turns out to be Jake. He asks her a question about what to do after meeting someone special, someone who challenges his views and makes him see different perspectives. Sam immediately realizes that he's talking about her. Seconds later, Jake enters the booth while still on call with Sam. The two can't contain their feelings anymore, so they approach each other and kiss. Looks like they both finally found the magic that they were looking for, or rather, the magic found them.